our team today on our webinar, Pivot with Power, Communication that Connects at the Virtual Table. I'm Marianne Smith-Edge, registered dietitian, and part of the team today that will serve as your moderator. So to get started, let's just have a quick poll. And so as you see the poll coming, we'll talk about, so how would you describe your current experience with virtual meetings? So take the next minute. Has it always been smooth as silk, thinking that you've just been in the room and virtual's not been a problem? Are chaotic conversations, everybody's engaged, but almost too engaged? Are herding cats, even though virtual people are focused not only on the virtual meeting, but they're checking their phones, there's cats and dogs in the background? Or technology trauma. We all have somewhat technology trauma, but we also know that virtual meetings sometimes can be nothing but technology trauma. Hopefully today our trauma will be minimized in that regard. So we have just a few more seconds. So thank you for submitting the poll. And it looks like that we have about, the good news is it's about 30% say it's smooth as silk, or chaotic conversations, or technology trauma. I guess the good news is very few felt like it was herding cats. So with that, we will, that gives us some thought process as we move forward to think about how we can continue to make our presentation as smooth as silk. So when we talk about, as you all know, this webinar, for those of you that are joining us, that are registered dietitians or dietetic technicians registered, there's one continuing education hour approved by the Commission on Dietetic Registration. And so a brief review of our learning objectives today is first just to identify core responsibilities of the moderator to facilitate engagement and participation, to recognize connections are essential and achievable via virtual communication, and how to create the basic dynamics of transforming in-person groups to virtual. And finally, how to apply improvisational research through exercises that will enhance group cohesiveness and engagement. So to see our objectives in action, I'd like to ask my other team to join the group, and if we'll, before we, so we're glad today that we have our three presenters, and first one will be Barbara Mayfield, and Barbara is a retired nutrition professor from Purdue University and is editor of the soon-to-be-released authoritative guide to nutrition communications by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Definitely a huge project where she's heard it more than 50 authors over the past couple of years. Following Barbara will be Julie Satterfield. Julie hails from Alabama, and she is the owner of Shame-Free Eating. She's an author, a writer, and extraordinaire when it comes to hosting small groups and counseling virtually. And our final presenter, but certainly not least, will be Sonia Stetzler. Sonia is a registered dietitian, master's in communication, and also trained in improv, which will give us some great insight as we go forward. Her business, Effective Communications, is all about working with clients to communicate effectively. So thanks, team. And before I turn it over to Barbara, I will just talk of the few basics of moderating as we move forward, as I kind of build out the first objective. So we'd like to think that virtual meetings and conferences, are really the reality, and frankly, they are here to stay. I think for many of us, we found that it's been very positive, and we hope today that you will get some skills that will continue to improve your overall positive interaction with connecting virtually. But as a moderator, the importance of a moderator is really to be there to assure that the meeting, whether virtually or in place, runs smoothly. So first of all, as a moderator, we need to be prepared. And to be prepared is know the speaker, know the agenda. But I have learned that sometimes when running panels virtually, it's not as easy as when you do it on in person. And I, being a panelist, have learned that. So one tip that you might see, that you will see today, is that as the presenters are within 2 minutes of their presentation, you'll see, hopefully unobtrusively, me appear on the screen, but it will also give the speakers a subtle reminder that their time is about to end. As a moderator, we need to be present, always listening to the speakers, being able to connect at the end, summarize, and help ask questions. And if something happens, that we're there to help out. And most of all, be positive. We hope we've enjoyed putting together this presentation, and we hope that you will enjoy it as well. So as a moderator and also owner of AgriNutrition Edge, a speaker and a writer, it's great that the four of us have connected over the last few years as speakers and actually communicators. And the great thing about the four that you're hearing from today, I'm from Kentucky, we have Indiana, North Carolina, and Alabama, and we connect virtually on a routine basis in the room, around the table, just not at a physical table. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara Mayfield, and Barbara will give us that first connect to communicate. Barbara.
Thank you. Let's see. Whoops. Back up. I need to find myself.
I can see your slides.
I can see your slide. I can't see me. Whoops. How do I find myself?
You are.
Start my video. There I am. Am I muted?
I can hear.
You can hear me. Okay. Well, here, technology trauma. We're making sure we figure out how to do this. Thank you so much, Marianne. And I am really looking forward to working together with you to build our virtual communication skills. This is something we're all getting better at. And to start with, I think we can all agree that this COVID-19 pandemic has brought about massive changes in the ways we conduct business and in the ways we communicate. And how we respond to those changes is our choice. We can pine for the good old days, or we can embrace this change, and we can learn and master new skills and be prepared for the new normal that's surely going to include a high usage of these virtual communication channels. And rather than bemoan their shortcomings, we can aspire to higher standards of virtual communication. New and improved can be what comes out of this COVID-19 pandemic experience. We can pivot with power and not only communicate better via virtual channels, but in person as well. The idea of pivoting when faced with a crisis like this pandemic is nothing new. In fact, many periods in history that were marked by war or disease were also times of incredible scientific advancements, inventions, and creation of great works of art and music and literature. Crisis has the power to stimulate creativity if we allow it. Did you know that Vincent van Gogh painted Starry Night from an insane asylum? I would classify that as a crisis. In fact, crises often demand change. I recently heard the story of the Swiss Army knife, which poignantly illustrates the power of the pivot. This famous knife has been around since 1897. More than 12 million are manufactured every year. Imagine the potential impact of 9/11, when air travel changed forever and the pocket knife became a prohibited item. What did the Victorinox company do? Did they wait for things to return to normal? No, they pivoted. They expanded in new areas and they thrived. Challenge the thought that how we communicated or operated before was working perfectly, let alone well. Has this pandemic pointed out things that we could definitely do better? For one, it has shown us quite starkly just how much we humans need to connect. We need it even more than haircuts. In fact, many people are regretting the term social distancing and encouraging replacing it with physically distant yet socially connected. I agree. Purdue President Mitch Daniels spoke of this need for connection in his recent commencement address to the class of 2020, which he gave here recorded in this empty hall. He shared about the epidemic of loneliness, which was a crisis before this pandemic, but it's now magnified. Daniels put it this way: humans are social creatures, or as sometimes said, relational beings. The ability to interact, communicate, and collaborate is what defines us. We thrive on contact with others, and we suffer severely in its absence. The worst punishment that we impose on a heinous criminal is solitary confinement. Ponder that thought. Connection. Did you know that the English word communication comes from the Latin word communis, which means connection? To truly communicate is to connect. My message to you today, and in the first masterclass session that I'm going to present on June 16th, is this: connect to communicate. Effective communication is more than a message. It's more than a nifty new channel. It's a communicator, connecting with their audience to deliver clear, compelling messages that meet their needs, help them solve problems, and promote positive change. Communication is a relational activity. Now, don't get nervous. We aren't confusing this type of relationship with what you experience with your spouse or your parents or your children or your best friends or even close colleagues. This relationship can be short-term and last no longer than one encounter, or it could be longer term, as in a series of classes or a long-standing client. It's a relationship that causes the audience to say, they understand me, I feel seen, I feel heard, they care about me. You connect with your audience. You connect to communicate. Now, virtual channels potentially make this more difficult, but not impossible. Being in person is no guarantee of connecting or communicating effectively. Poor communication is all too common. My challenge to you is to use this pause in your regularly scheduled programming to hone your communication skills in any area. All four of us are going to be sharing all kinds of communication principles, tools, strategies, and tips to help you. You'll get a quick start today, and we'll take a deeper dive in the masterclass sessions to follow. To get you started, I'd like to introduce you to a framework for designing and delivering communication. This model is included in the soon-to-be-published Communicating Nutrition book. And it applies to all types of communication, not just nutrition communication. To be most effective, we must connect with our audiences at every stage, from inputs to outcomes. This includes assessing our audience's needs. And today I'm going to share with you some quick and dirty, yet effective approaches that you can take for audience assessment. And this provides us with essential information to make the communication decisions of how to deliver that message. And in our next masterclass session, I'm going to share one of my favorite tools for crafting messages that meet your audience's needs and that you make with audience input. We'll also look at why and how to engage with your audience during communication delivery, and how to assess audience outcomes and solicit and respond to audience feedback. This framework guides us in communicating effectively, whether we're communicating virtually or in person. So think about what types of communication that you create or you'd like to create. Would you like to become better at writing? Do you write newsletters, blogs, articles, books, handouts, memos, sales copy, website copy? No matter what, the written word is foundational to all forms of communication, and honing our writing skills is fundamental. Or you might want to hone your visual communication skills, such as making more dynamic social media posts or instructional videos, or add visual interest to those blog posts or website landing pages or sales flyers. Or you might be looking to improve your skills in verbal communication, which include live presentations, webinars, podcasts, media interviews, and even leading meetings in person or over video conferencing platforms like Zoom. Whether in person or virtual, in order to communicate effectively, you must begin by assessing your audience. Assess what they need, what they want, and what they care about. So here's your homework, and this is in the handout, so you don't have to write this all down really quickly. We want you to discover your audience's most pressing questions and come to the first masterclass session equipped to take the next step. How? You connect with them. Even just a few members of your audience or someone as similar as possible. Here's a few strategies to pick from. You could explore online what questions are most commonly Googled. This website, and this again, it's posted in your handout, is a tool you can try. It's very fascinating and fun. You can ask your clients, your patients, or your customers, what is your biggest question? You can pose a question on social media. You can send out a survey to your email contacts. Assessing your audience is easier than you might think, and it's so important not to skip this step. In our first masterclass session, I'm going to show you how to use what you learn about your audience to create communication that connects with them. But between now and June 16th, expect to hear from us. We're going to be sending you a survey in just the next couple of days to find out your most burning questions, so please participate. And between now and when we meet again, tune into how well you connect to communicate. Do you give people your full attention? Do you listen to understand rather than respond? Do you contribute to the conversation? Virtually, this can be as simple as stopping while you're scrolling through social media and add a thoughtful comment. Connect to communicate. So now it's time for me to pass this back to Marianne. She's going to be introducing Julie next. And as I do, jot down any questions that you have for me. We're going to answer our questions after all of us have shared. You can just put them in the chat box. And if we aren't able to get to all of the questions today, we'll be able to address them in the masterclass sessions to follow. So see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Barbara, for an excellent presentation and definitely a great foundation to our next presenter. So next, as we mentioned, we have Julie Sutterfeld, and Julie will talk about how to create and lead online small groups. Julie, it's all yours.
Okay, great. Well, I'm so glad to be here, and I'm excited to talk a little bit about what I've learned so far, which is creating and leading online small groups. And I'm also going to start with a poll. So you see that coming up. Do you consider yourself technologically savvy? Absolutely. I do okay. Not really, but I'm making it. This is a hard no. Not technologically savvy. Oh, good. I see a lot of I do okay. We'll see how this turns out. I'm going to give you a couple more minutes, or not a couple more minutes, a few more seconds. But most of you have voted. All right, here's our winner. I do okay. I think that's probably where most of us are right now, saying, okay, I can do this, and kind of struggling through a little bit. So I'm glad to see that. Now I'm going to start, let me get this off my screen so that I can see. Sorry, there we go. I am going to start by giving you a little bit of background about my practice. Well, thought I was going to. All right. So my practice is part-time, and that is by design. I have 3 children, ages 11, almost 12 in a couple of days, through 18. And they're at 3 schools. They're active. We're active in lots of areas of our life. And so I chose to build my practice in a way that I could do everything that I needed to, but in shortened hours. And so it's really important that they count, obviously. And then 2, as a dietitian, I do a lot of different things as a dietitian. So I do one-on-one coaching, I do group coaching and programs, I do writing and speaking, and I teach adjunct sometimes. So what I discovered next was that I was really only doing one of those things in my office space. And many of my one-on-ones I was already seeing via Zoom, because they lived in different parts of Alabama. And so they would say, I really need to see you, or I'd like to see you. And so we started doing Zoom calls one-on-one. And I loved my office. It was so nice to have a place to go, at least at first. And then it became a place that I needed to go. It turned out that a lot of what I was doing from home. I might go to a coffee shop and work for a little bit. I was working in the evening sometimes, because different things would come up with children at school and things of that sort. So even though I had myself set up for in-person, I kept finding that if I was working on a talk, I might do it from home instead of going into the office. And so I wasn't using it. And even though I had my office specifically set up for groups, I found a really interesting phenomenon about group programs. And that is that people really like to go to places that they've been before, places that they have a certain comfort level with. So when I had a new office a few years ago, and I was trying to develop all these talks that I did, I went to different places, and I said, well, I want to bring them into my office. It turned out that was kind of hard for people. My clients that had been to my office before one-on-one would show up, but I had trouble with the groups sometimes getting them to my office. So I ended up speaking where people go. And so that was really interesting for me. And I'm certain that if I could have created a business that centered around the place that my place, and people would have come to me, but that really wasn't working within the context of my life at this particular time. And so just another plug for, we change as we go, just like with nutrition in life and in business. There's no one size fits all. And so we change stuff as we need it to fit. So with all that said, I decided to shift the coaching piece of my practice to be online. And I immediately knew I made the right choice. I felt a huge sense of relief. And even though I had done the cost analysis and knew my clients and I would both save money when we moved to an online platform, I really did not anticipate, excuse me, the biggest and most impactful shift that happened. And that was my business coordinator. Because I shifted to at home, I was now able to hire somebody to work for me for 5 invaluable hours per week. And she does all the things that I am not great at. She offers so much more value to my clients and to me than my specific office space had. So now that I am sold on the online gig for my practice, it's really important to me that I'm truly able to connect with people. We all know the value of small groups and connecting with others over a common thread in our lives. And in my practice, my clients do so much better when they know that their experience is not novel and that what they're going through is typical, expected human nature. And so it was really important for me to figure out how to still be able to do that even working from home. So I also found that when I created online groups, I didn't have some of those hindering factors that kept coming up, that I kept coming up against when I was doing in-person groups. So the intimidation of new places, traffic and travel time constraints and busy schedules, cost, which comes into everything. And I'm sure that you guys all have small groups that you don't want to have to discontinue because of COVID, or if you want to implement something new because of COVID. And I just want to tell you that you can definitely do it, because in that poll, I'm making it, but I'm not super technologically savvy. So let's keep going with this. Now, of course, if you have small groups, I know a lot of you have been pinch hitting with Zoom since March out of desperation, as have I, but I did want to share some specific strategies to really make the most of your online small groups and ideas for starting small groups that you really may not have considered before. So let's see here. First, we're going to brainstorm some groups, except I don't know where these little pieces went. Let's see here. There we go. So maybe some of this will spark some of your creative juices and think about what else can pop up. Now I'm going to have you do something if you'd like to. It's just kind of fun. And I think this platform can be fun. If you go to the bottom, you might be able to find the little part that says raise your hand or a little thumbs up. And so you can press that icon if you come up with an idea or if you think of something. But don't worry, I'm not going to call on you, but it might just be a fun way to play with this application. So you can go to the bottom of your screen and you can see either reactions or wave and play with that if you kind of have an idea as we're talking. So as I brainstorm groups and I think about things within the dietetics profession and outside of the profession, because obviously we are not just in our profession dealing with small groups at this point, we're doing all of it. So cardiac rehab, diabetes management, a breastfeeding supporter parenting group, a nonprofit board meeting, a lot of that going on, staff and department meetings, prayer groups, book clubs. I've done both of those. I've done most of these. Well, not a breastfeeding support. I don't do that anymore. Breastfeed, that is. And community clubs and organizations. So raise your hand if you think of anything, or if that made you think, I could probably do a small group on A, B, or C. All right, so here's some questions to ask yourself or think about. First, are you part of any small groups? If so, can you imagine how it would be on an online platform? What would be different? Some things that I think of that would be different are, we're not going to be hugging anybody, and I think that's one of the things I miss the most. We're not going to be sharing snacks probably with people. We're going to miss everyone talking at once because the online platform doesn't really let you do that very well. And breaking into smaller physical groups to chat individually. But Sonia's going to show us that you might actually be able to do that. So are those things, though, what make a group successful? If it's a dinner club, I said, probably. You're going to have trouble having a dinner club online, but you could maybe cheers over at the table, but that would kind of hinder that a bit. But maybe a book club, maybe not. You can still make a successful group. We actually just had our congregational meeting that we have biannually over Zoom on Sunday afternoon, and it was really great to see all the members, and we have an older church population, and all of them getting on there. It was really great. So that was fun. Let's see here. So what is your purpose of your group? Can you meet those objectives without meeting in person? Like I just said, our church meeting, we sure did. We met all the objectives. And then another important point, I jumped on this too quickly, but do you have to have a business that's set up virtually in order to host a successful online group program? Absolutely not. If you've been on a Zoom call like this, you can host a program. And then before I wrap up my 10 minutes, I really want to encourage you to think about and visualize the small group that you could implement. Over the next few weeks, My colleagues here today and I will be going into more detail on each of our topics, and I'm going to specifically be addressing these two areas. I'll talk about some of the strategies for facilitating successful online small groups. How do you build rapport, good timing, communication avenues, and then some of the simple platforms that I put into place and that I use to run my online programs. I listed just 3 of them here, but I use a lot of other things that are free and really easy for the technologically challenged. So those that aren't as technologically challenged are going to be doing a great job. So I hope that you will plan to join us, and I really appreciate your time. I'm going to pass the baton back over to Marianne so that she can get Sonia introduced for us. So thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Julie. You gave us some wonderful words of wisdom, and to realize that you don't have to be the most high-tech individual to really be able to communicate, and physical distance shouldn't be a barrier. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sonia, and Sonia is going to bring some new and innovative ideas to how to really get us engaged. So, you know, as we're getting close to those 30, 45 minutes type, that folks don't wander and that we really get engaged. So Sonia, it's all yours.
Great, thank you, Marianne. So I have a question for you. Every day, I like to indulge in a Dove Promise dark chocolate. And you know, the little candies with the chocolate with the inspirational quote on the inside of the wrapper. So I'm going to launch a quick poll here. What do you guess was my quote for today? Was it be the sculptor of your dreams? Your vibe attracts your tribe? Or a smile is the quickest way to brighten a room? Which do you think was my quote of the day? I'll give you about 30 seconds to poll here, and it looks like, wow, this is close. It looks like a smile is the quickest way to brighten a room. Oh, that's winning. All right, looks like we got most of the votes in. And let's look at the results. A smile is the quickest way to brighten the room is the actual, well, it's not the actual, that's what you voted. But actually, I have a little secret. I ate 3 pieces of the chocolates today in preparation. So all of you were correct. All of those were my quotes of the day. All right. So as you probably know, presenting online, whether you're conducting a meeting or delivering a presentation, is quite challenging. It's different than delivering online or in person. We don't get the feedback that we seek from our audiences to know if they're getting the message or not. And then we have distractions. All of us probably are familiar with the YouTube video that came when the little boy, his son, came in the room as he was being interviewed. And children, pets, delivery people, our spouses or partners, all of these can be distracting to us. So here's one thing I do know, however, in doing these online presentations, which I have been doing for the past couple of months, how we show up for our audiences are how they are going to show up for us. And so it's really key that we come to these presentations with a lot of energy. What we also know from people who do this on a regular basis and who have some science behind it is that the bandwidth in our video platforms often strip away some of the emotionality that comes as we are presenting. So that might mean for some of us that we have to kind of amp it up a little bit to keep our audiences engaged. There was a study that was done by Justin Hale and a fellow named Joseph Grenny who are with VitalWorks. And what they have come to realize with their particular research was they were able to get their virtual audience as engaged as their face-to-face audiences by doing a couple of things. The first guideline that they recommend in any type of virtual presentation is engage your audience in the first 60 seconds. Now, we have attempted to do that today. Hopefully you noticed. Notice that we started with a poll for just about every presenter. You can do that as a way to engage your audience. So what you're doing is you're setting them up. When you engage in that first 60 seconds, your audience is more likely to stay with you and stay engaged throughout the rest of your presentation. There are a couple other techniques that we have used today and that I'll be talking about. And one is the one-word check-in. Now, some of you were present early on when we asked you to, how are you feeling today? Oh, I'm feeling great, partly cloudy. I would have your audience also be able to communicate to you privately if they don't want to communicate how they're feeling publicly. And it's really important to have a check-in nowadays, especially with so much going on. There's a lot of stress, tension, distractions. Yes, we want our audiences to feel comfortable and to feel safe. And sometimes expressing an emotion that might be negative might not feel safe. So do have the option, and you do have that in Zoom, where people can message you privately about how they're feeling. And that enables you to take a temperature of where your audience is in relation to what's going on in the world. Another simple check-in is what I call the presence check-in. And this is something that you can do somewhere maybe in the middle of your presentation to check if your audience is still there with you. So I'm going to ask you to do that very quickly with me. And a presence check-in is just how engaged are you at the moment? On a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being, I am distracted, I've got so many things on my mind, I can't stay with you. And 5 means, oh, I'm with you, I'm here, I am present. Where are you on that scale? And if you can quickly check it and put it in the chat box, that would be great. Oh, great. I see lots of 5s, 4s. Okay, super, fantastic. Awesome. And somebody did ask if this recording was going to be available, and the answer is yes. We are recording, so it will be here. And that's another thing as a speaker, I do like to check the chat box. All right, fantastic. Okay. We have another, let's say you have a group or a meeting, and we know that people, especially if a group hasn't been together for a significant amount of time, maybe they have been together for a while but still don't know one another. What we know from the research and what we know from this virtual life that we are currently living is that when people have the opportunity to get a little personal, and humor is a part of this. Yes, I do improv. The purpose of improv, A, is not to be funny, but to find the funny, because life in general is funny if you think about it. So I'm going to pause my share for just a moment, and I'm going to ask for a couple of volunteers, because the next exercise is an exercise called Anybody Who. And this is a great opportunity for folks to get to know one another a little bit better. So I'm going to ask, actually, let's see if maybe Barb, Julie, anybody else in the audience who would like to raise your hand and be a part of this? All right, awesome. Okay, I don't see any other hand raised, but that's okay. We can play with just 3 people. All right, so what we're going to do is, and for the sake of time, instead of stopping the video, I am going to raise something like maybe a pad of sticky notes to put over your video. So what that does is, if you don't have a sticky note, just a piece of paper would work. If you do have a pad of sticky notes, it actually puts a kind of colorful view on your video screen, ask a couple of questions. And if the answer for the question for you is yes, then leave your video on. If the answer for you is no, then you can hide your screen, like so. All right. So first question is, who has a younger sibling? Who has a sibling that is younger than you? If the answer is yes, stay on the screen. If the answer is no, put it up. Julie, it looks like you and I are the only ones that have a younger sibling. Awesome. All right. Second question. Who has played or does play a musical instrument? If you've played a musical instrument, stay on camera. And if you, oh, hey, Lucia, gonna play with us? Awesome. Great. I'm gonna ask you to unmute here for a second. All right. Fantastic. Okay, second question. Do you play or have you played a musical instrument? If the answer is yes, stay online. And if the answer is no, you can cover up your video. We've all played a musical instrument. Lucia, what did you play? Lucia, what did you or do you play?
I played the cello, and then my mom made me take piano. So I should qualify. I may not have played. I tried. Does that count? Okay.
That'll count. Great. Barb, what did you play?
I played the piano. It was a long time ago.
Yes. Awesome. Julie, what did you play? Oh, you're muted. I think you were piano. What?
Piano a long time ago, and then a few drum lessons with my son.
Awesome. Okay. So we have a piano quartet. Awesome. All right. Last question. Who in their driving history has gotten more than one ticket? Yes. If it's yes, stay on the line. And if it's no, you can cover yourself. All right. Well, it looks like Mary Ann, Lucia, and me, we are the lead feet in the group.
Too many parking tickets in Toronto. It's hard to find a place to park. It used to be, not anymore. So
Great.
thank you for this
great.
activity.
Yeah, super, fantastic. Thank you for playing. Thank you, Julie and Barb and Mary Ann and Lucia. So that is called Anybody Who, and it's a great way to start engagement or to start a meeting or to get the people who don't know one another to get to know one another a little bit better. Now I'm going to play one more or have one more activity, and this is the breakout room. So for those of you who are not familiar with the breakout room, it's very effective because people online want with other people. Interactivity is really critical for success with a meeting or a presentation. So Mary Ann is on, and I know my time is about done. So, but I am going to, we're going to see how, if we can do this within the next couple of minutes. The way this game is played, it is, you're going to ask somebody in your group the same question 3 times. And so Mary Ann, I'm going to demonstrate how this is going to work. So Mary Ann, what is going right in your life? What's not wrong with your life? That's the way to phrase it. What's not wrong with your life?
My health.
Awesome. Mary Ann, what's not wrong with your life?
I have a calm community around me.
Super. Mary Ann, what's not wrong with your life?
Technology is working.
Yes, awesome, awesome. So what we're going to do is I'm going to send everyone into a breakout room. There will be 4 of you in the breakout room. The person with the shortest hair will be the one to ask the question. You're going to ask the question 3 times to that same person. And then the person who responded is then going to have a turn to ask somebody else in the group, what's not wrong with your life? Okay, so I'm going to send you into the breakout rooms. It'll take about a minute for you to get there. You'll need to do this very quickly because I'm going to bring you back in about 2 to 3 minutes. And it will also take a minute for Zoom to bring you back into the central room. So if you're ready, there's going to be between 3 and 4 people in each breakout room. You don't have to click anything. This will do it automatically. You might have to take yourself off of mute when you get to the breakout room. So here we go. Okay, so for those of you who are online or listening to the replay, this is a good opportunity. My experience with breakout rooms is that it is usually the most highly rated portion of a session or a meeting or a presentation. Again, your audience really enjoys the interaction. They like meeting new people, and you can use this for a problem-solving session. You can use this for brainstorming. I teach public speaking, and often I'll have my students do a longer breakout where they actually do a small rehearsal with their peers so that they can be prepared or more prepared when they come to deliver their speech. Also, this helps them to get feedback on parts of their speech that they might not feel so comfortable with, or maybe there's a place where they want to get some feedback. So this is another way to have them work in a small group. Oftentimes, and as a host of the breakout room, I can join other groups, A, to see if they're on task, B, to see if there are any questions. And oftentimes in a group, if I'm delivering a more, say a workshop based in Zoom, there are people who will ask me questions in the smaller breakout room that they didn't feel comfortable asking in the large group. Now, honestly, the questions that they ask are questions that I find many people in the room have, but they just didn't feel comfortable asking it in the larger room with larger context. Another way that I have seen the breakout rooms used is you send your audience to work out a problem, and I might be sitting here just jamming or getting ready for the next part of my presentation. So it gives you a break as a presenter to have your participants go and work on something while you get ready for the next part of your presentation. So I think I am going to bring everybody back in. Okay, and again, Zoom gives you about a minute for everybody to go into their breakout rooms and then a minute to come back. So it's a pretty, I think, cool tool to use. All right, so we have about 30 seconds left. Awesome, so it looks like most people are coming back from the breakout rooms. We've got about 30 seconds left. Okay, 20 seconds. All right, we'll close this down in about 5 seconds here. Okay, it looks like everybody is back. So if you could put in the chat room, what was that like for you? Did you like the chat room? I really like that particular exercise as a way to start a meeting. It puts it on a positive note. And the way you ask that question, what's not wrong with your life? It kind of makes you stop and think. Because we're so used to asking, so how are you? Or what's going on in your life or whatever. When you ask the question the way that we ask it, what's not wrong with your life? It makes people think, and you start off on a very positive note. Yeah. So a couple of minutes, because I know, a couple of seconds, because I know that I am running a little bit over. The way that you end the meeting is just as important as the way you begin your meeting. So what I wanted to do was to ask you one more question as a way to finish my section. In the chat box, to finish strongly, and also provide us with some feedback, because you're not going to get a survey from us. put in, I've got 3 prompts for you. I liked, I wish, what if? If you could complete that, one of those sentences, one of those, just one sentence, and it could just be something very short, need a whole epiphany or a paragraph. What I liked, or I liked, I wish, what if? And you could continue to write this in the chat box as we wrap up for today. So I find that this little exercise, I like, I wish, what if, is another way to round out or to close out your presentation or meeting. So with that, I will stop the share. You can continue to put your content in the chat box, and I will going to turn it back to Mary Ann. Thank you for participating. All right, if I can find my mouse. Here we go.
Thank you, Sonia. And I think what a fun way to wrap up this webinar and to realize that you can still connect. In fact, from breaking out in one of the breakout sessions, and I saw that on some of the other chat rooms, it's like, oh, an old friend, how great. We're not old friends, just a longtime friend. I think that's probably the best. But at this point, thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Julie and Sonia, for giving us some really good tips to think about next steps, and seeing that some have said, I like the practical tips and breakout room. So the fact is we have just a few minutes, and I'm going to ask, I think I've got the time for a couple of questions here. So one question, Julie, you really have a nice history of doing small groups, and you mentioned a lot of but maybe what's been one of your most successful small groups, whether it's professionally or even community-based? What would you say have been one of your most successful ones?
Online small groups, it would have to be, the area that I focus in is ditching the diet and empowering people to have a positive relationship with food and their body. And so that's the kind of thing that you really do want connections with people on. So, but it can be intimidating. And so I think that the small group online actually serves really well in that, because people can get to know from the safety of behind the computer screen, for lack of a better way to put it. And one of the things that we found, and I'm going to talk about this in a couple weeks, is that everybody was using different online platforms in this particular group. Some people were Instagram people, some were Facebook, some people had given it up altogether. And so we ended up using a GroupMe to connect outside of the group classes. And it was such a neat opportunity. And so then when someone would see something or would have a feeling, see an article during the week, they would share that. And it just became a really great way to connect. And so I felt the rapport building the whole time. So it was a really positive online experience and worked well with that population.
Thanks. And Sonia, I think you gave us some great improv tips, and having a nephew that was a theater major, I had been exposed, I guess you could say, or a participant in some improv along his growing up. But how did you become engaged, and how did you see that it could help in communications?
I love that question. I started my journey in improv about 6 years ago. Most of the top speakers that are making really good money on the speaking circuit have a little bit of improv in their background. And I thought, well, I'll try it. And what I learned from those first series of classes, improv was nothing more than communication skills, the listening, the observing of the nonverbal communication, and the yes and, the collaborative nature. And these are all communication skills that we need. There is a subsection of improv called applied improvisation. And these are, I belong to that group. Applied improvisation is taking these same techniques into other areas other than the comedy stage. So it's being used in medical schools, it's business schools, it's being used in organizations. And I find that it is a perfect tool for training and for facilitating better communication skills, and online improv certainly works well. So, and if people are interested, I'm planning to do a full hour of applied improvisation June 30th as part of our masterclass series. If you'd like to learn more, and if you have specific questions about how to take an exercise that you do with your current group and taking that online.
Great, thank you, Sonia. And Barb, one final question is, you really gave us a good basis to start. So what would be just maybe one effective way you think to really encourage people to respond virtually?
This is such a good question because this is really a challenge. It's really hard to get people to respond. And there's a number of techniques that you can use, and we'll elaborate a little bit more on this as we dig in deeper on the 16th. But one of the things that's so important is to make that connection. And so when people feel connected to that topic and connected to you, they're much more likely to respond. Certainly, I'm sure most people have seen that it's people they know that respond on social media, but making that response easier. I've been really pleased with how well people have responded on this webinar. I've been on a couple of webinars recently, and the #1 response to most polling questions is no answer. And we didn't have that. And so I applaud all of you that are watching that you were engaged, and we appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And yes, I love all the feedback and the chat that responded to Sonia. And if there's any additional questions, we definitely will respond to them. I see mainly comments. But so at this point, I believe we want to just remind it, and we can go back to the slide there, Sonia, if you have one. And so,
1 second. Yep.
So first of all, we want to thank you for participating. And I think, as on behalf of all the speakers, thank you for actively participating. This was really what it was about, was not to speak at you, but with you. And of course, I think that's the reality. Sometimes virtually, that's not easier said than done. But the real key here is that you did engage, and we thank you for that. So remember, this was our introduction, and we'd love for you to come back and join the master classes. That would be the 16th. You'll hear from Barbara, the 23rd, Julie, and the 30th, Asanya. And I will always be sticking around during those times when adding some additional moderating tips and guiding us through to make sure that we have a fun and educational and a workshop that flows. And so again, thank you for being there. And remember, you can sign up. We will have links available, as well as for your certificate for your 1CEU today. And we realized it was a little bit difficult to download the handout. So we will make sure that all of you had the handout, because kudos to Julie's assistant. It is a great handout and something that's very, very useful. So on behalf of the team, thank you for participating today. It was great fun. I always learn from my team and from each of you, and knowing that the best way to communicate may not, as we move into the new future, means that we can always connect. We just have to look at the opportunity to think about how to effectively connect virtually. We always have a table. It just may be our virtual table. So thank you all again. Thanks for taking time out of an hour of your day for being with us. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully on the 16th as we begin our more mastermind series. Have a great day, everyone. Be safe, be well.